Okay, with the player controls, the other thing that we need to start looking at is not just the code itself. If you've noticed, we've been just dropping code in, we've started working it over, kind of a general idea. But what's something that we're missing at the moment? Hopefully you've kind of thought about it. Is that we don't have a direction. We don't have actually like a document that we're using to say what to do first, what to do next. So let's go ahead and jump over here real fast, just to a Mario control scheme. When you're coming up with it, remember it's really easy just to kind of get caught up in creating the code really fast and just start working through it. But if you don't have a solid plan laid out, then oftentimes you'll start working through something and then you'll start adding to it. And that's kind of the dangerous part, is that when you start adding to it, you could easily increase your code, double the size of it before you even know it. So make sure, like what we've done here, I've just got I started jotting down exactly what it is we want to accomplish. So for instance, what can Mario do? And this again is kind of a little different take on what we've done before in terms of the questions we're asking and how we're filling it out. This one, we're just basically asking questions. The character, they're going to be able to idle, they're going to be able to crouch, they can walk, run, jump, the crouch, jump, and a fall. Okay, so this is all. These are the only type that we're going to look at. We're not going to do anything different with it. So we know kind of our limit to what we're going to have, but also that'll help us to understand what all we need to do while coding. How big of a scheme, how big of a scope we need to be thinking about. The next thing is going to be what can Mario interact with. So inside the environment, we know that just based on the standard gameplay, he can break blocks with his head. So granted, there's other versions where he can do a jumps and a smash and hit him from below as well. However, for ours, we're just going to focus on two things, which would be hitting blocks with your head and then hitting enemies with your feet. And if you can do either of those, we'll be able to check for both of them. And then also we'll have one for teleporting, so he has the ability to go into one of the green tubes and teleport to the next one. Alright, and then for the control side, how are we going to control Mario? Well, we're going to control him basically with speeds and jumps, gravity. We'll have a starting position that could be an option for him, a general move direction. Now, move direction is going to be a little bit different. Our current control scheme is actually calling for a move direction for the vector. However, we're going to actually set it up so that move direction is saying what direction is Mario facing, left or right. And then we'll have the velocity. We should probably make velocity the word that we use to actually move Mario left and right. That way, it's a little bit easier to read and understand. And then after that, we have the other, which is does Mario make any sounds or particle effects? And based on the Mario character, Mario could either be making sound effects with running, he could do it with jumping, hurting, dying. He could have puffs of particle effects when he jumps or when he lands. So there's a lot of additional elements here. They could really kind of just continue to increase each one of our checks that we do for when Mario's running and moving around inside the environment. And then the other part is just to kind of expand on what we had before, which was just saying a description. Is it, do we really know what we're talking about if we were coming up with a nice short description of it? And for us, it would be that it provides a 2D character with basic movement, and the movements would be defined inside of there. And then also it's basically to provide us with a very simple but quick way of creating a system for a Mario-style control scheme. Alright, so for the controller itself, we can go ahead and define our idea, at least the idea that we're going to have for this one, is going to be able to be used with the joystick and the keyboard. For the keyboard, we use the standard WASD keys as well as the arrow keys, spacebar, and control. And we can even add to this. It's going to be a control scheme, but we can also have the shift as well using that one. So both of those should work for us. Alright, and then for the control scheme, again, just I've defined it a little bit clearer as it goes through here, just so you can know what we're trying to work towards. So instead of just being in here and coming up with an idea on the spot here, taking some time, think about it, play the Mario game, learn the control schemes on it, and then let's go ahead and just have them written down so that we're pulling straight from here. Alright, so I'm going to take this part actually. We'll go ahead and use this as part of our guide, as well as going back and forth with the variables that we could use from here. So on the first part, if we go back to our character control, we'll go ahead and just delete this part since it's we can add that in a little bit later. I'm going to go ahead and drop in the description here. And part of the description on that side of it, we want to go ahead and just have the, we'll go ahead and just put in above here. We'll just define what it is. This is going to be the player controller. And we'll just define it as the 2D Mario clone. Alright. If you decide to put additional elements in here, you could also say, for instance, for me, I'll just say it's Walker Boys is for the author of it, and then you could put in a date for it as well, and any other additional information you want. The main thing, though, is to have the elements here, and then a title or something for someone to actually be able to see. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue with what we've got. We started off again, we were jumping into the code, we were getting him to be able to walk left and right, to be able to jump, jump higher if he was pushing the control button down plus the jump. But we've actually, just by doing this, if you're not noticing, like maybe you're writing it down but you're not really testing out what's happening, we've actually created an issue for it. Is that if we were to apply an animation here and an animation here, which animation do you think would play if these were two different ones? Well, let's find out real fast just in terms of prints. One of the really good things you can do, whether it's a debug log or it's a print, is that I could go in here and just say, we'll say, are you here? Okay. If I say, are you here, I'm just going to save it. Now, what I'm going to do inside the game side is when I play it, I'm not going to push just the jump button. I'm going to push jump and the fire button. So when I'm in here, if I'm holding the control button down and I jump, now notice he jumped high. He didn't jump low, so he did the higher jump right here. However, the print variable that came up said, "Are you here?" So this is one of those that eventually, when you start adding additional elements to it, like the animation, the sprite sheet, you'll start to notice that, hey, wait a second, I didn't actually have this as a very good closed if statement. This if statement works just right along with this one as well, because if this is pressed, this is a true statement. Well, just like this is a true statement. So when I push the jump button, it becomes true right here. Well, at the same time, if I push this and it's true and this is true, it plays this one. So, what does that mean? Well, that means that we need to actually, here we'll leave this up here actually. That means that we need to provide another statement for this one, so that if something else isn't happening or something is happening, then it'll go ahead and bypass this one, it'll skip this one, and do only this one. Alright, so we could say if this is jumping, and we could say if the input, we'll say if input.get button, and the get button isn't the fire button. Okay, so we can say if not get button, and we'll say fire one. Alright, so if we say it's this, but it's not this one, then you can do this one. We're saying on this one, it has to be this and this one. Alright, so if we try this one, let's go ahead again, we'll save this, we'll play it. Now inside of here this time, when I decide to jump, so for instance, I'll just do a regular jump. Okay, so it should say, are you here, which is good. Now we'll clear it. Now I'm going to hold down control and jump. Now if you notice, this time nothing came up down here. So we've actually made it so that it's only checking for this possibility. So the moment we hold down control to do the fire one, it's going to skip this, and this is going to be the true statement it finds. Now that guarantees that we're separating ourselves between the two. It's only going to check for the two as separate, not group them together like it did before. So again, that's just one of those small little pieces that you can be programming for a while, and then all of a sudden you start seeing something that doesn't seem right with your code. It works, but it doesn't actually seem to be working exactly right. And again, those are those small parts and pieces you want to start noticing. Now, again, another element here is that if you notice when we play this one, this time around, actually hold down the spacebar. And if you hold the spacebar down, notice what happens to the character. As long as you hold it down, the moment he hits the ground, he bounces back up. Well, you know that's not one of the elements that's directly related to a Mario type game. You can't just hold it down and have him keep jumping like that. So again, we go back to our code here. Something that appeared to be working now all of a sudden has to be kind of readjusted to make sure it works. That first statement we didn't actually do a down, so we did just a get button. So make sure that this first one is complete with the get button down. That way, when we go back to our code here, if I hold the spacebar down, you'll notice that he stops. So I have to actually let go of the spacebar, and I have to push the spacebar again to have him jump. So this one kind of keeps that control where it's the user actually pushing the button down to cause the character to jump. Alright. Now that's going to kind of get us set up for a little bit more of a solid control of when and what happens for the jump option right there, which is good. What we want to do next, and we're just going to kind of keep going with things here. Let's go ahead and just get kind of reset up for the player controls, more for a longer term type of project here. So the first thing on our controls, you'll notice we've got a lot of variables that we need to actually define inside the code. So let's start off by just defining several variables so that we can start calling them up and using them. And these, again, this is something that you may find yourself doing gradually. It may be something that you do once in a while. You go, okay, I need a new variable, so you make a new variable. If you've defined the system really well, then you should be able to just go and copy all your variable types that you defined through your initial concepting there, and just define them all inside the script. So let's start off by taking a look at what we really need from our initial one. What we started with was just speed and jump speed, but we know that based on our Mario controls, we're going to have a walk speed and a run speed, and we even have a fall speed, but that's going to be more vertical than horizontal. So let's go ahead and go back to player controls. And for this first one, now if I decide, for instance, maybe I have twice as much code here. Well, if I go up here and I just change this and I start going down here trying to find those speed variables, it may get a little bit sloppy. I may make some mistakes. So be sure that when you're changing variables for the first time through, if you're changing names for it, just select the thing you have, and depending on the type of editor you're using, just choose the hotkey, whatever it is, or go up to edit. For instance, for this one, I could go to edit. And let's see, actually it'll be in search, just find and replace. Depending on the one that you have though, go to the replace option. I'm going to find the speed. I want to make sure it's actually matching both the whole word and the case. And we just want to replace this one. We're going to just call this one walk speed. And if we replace this, so we'll just replace all. And that's going to replace the walk speed here. It'll replace the walk speed down here as well. And then looks like it'll be one other spot through there. So we'll go ahead and go with another option here. The next one we want to do is going to be our jump speed. And the jump speed we can actually call, actually we'll just leave for jump speed for a moment. Let's go ahead and just make a couple more variables. What other ones do we have? We've got run and fall. So for this one, let's go ahead and just do a variable, and we'll do a run speed. And for the run speed, let's go ahead and just make this one set to 2.0. We're going to slow the walk speed down a little bit here. We'll just put this one down to about 1.5. And then we'll also make a fall speed. And for the fall speed, we'll do a 2.0 on this one. And part of this, thinking about the fall speed, is that when the character it's not necessarily the jump so much as it is just falling off of an object. We want to be able to control how fast they fall off the object. Alright, so we have the basic walk speed, run speed, and fall speed. Let's go ahead and do a walk jump, and a run jump, and a crouch jump. Now again, these are variables that we could put in later, and we could build up. But I'm going to go ahead and just provide these at the start, just so that you're able to focus. We don't have to jump back and forth in the code, but we can just kind of go, okay, we've already defined our walk jump, so we can just start to use it. So the variable for walk jump, Again, this will be a float value, and we'll go ahead and define it. We'll say that we can jump at about a 6 to a 6.5, somewhere in between there. And these will all be, we can tweak these later. We'll just put in some numbers that we currently have. The other one will be a run jump. And for us, our run jump, we can put it around a 9. We could do about a 9 to a 10. And then we'll do one more. For this one, we'll do a crouch. And this is going to be a crouch jump. And we'll make it a float. And for the crouch jump, we'll do one at about a 10. And so go up just a little bit higher than the run jump. That way, when you get to certain things, you can actually make it just high enough that you have to crouch down and jump. Alright, and then we have our, let's go ahead and get rid of our jump speed here. Now, what did I do at this point? I just deleted that one, which means what? Well, we have jump speed down here, we've got jump speed up here. So again, if we're not thinking about it, we're just typing in new variables and stuff, and all of a sudden it hits us like, wait a second, we haven't actually defined what we need to do for those. So remember that when you're working on it, make sure you're actually, when you're cleaning things up and changing names, do the find and then do the replace with it. Again, I could actually go in here and take, we have our walk jump. We'll go ahead and just copy it since we don't have too much code right here. We got the 2 right there. So we'll place those in there for the walk jump, and this is actually going to be run jump right here. So we could copy this one, and this is going to be the run jump option right there, like that. So this one will be the standard walk jump. This will be the run jump. Alright, so we've got down to our crouch jump. We'll go ahead and keep with the current float value that we have for gravity right here. And for these, if you notice, see how they start to get kind of in the way, some words get a little bit further over. When you start working over just kind of the basic kind of a clean look for the code, usually you want to separate these into columns, and just think of it just as regular reading columns. Is that if you have them far enough away from each other, even like with these, usually you'll find your longest word, and then you'll just make it a little bit further past that one. But you could even think of these as like 3 columns. You could do a column where variables are, a column where the assignment goes to it, and then a column for commenting. Alright, so we could actually, let's go ahead and just take these a little bit further over. Okay, so we have our gravity. It looked like we had, double check on this one. We also had a starting position here, so let's do a starting position, move, and velocity. Alright, so for this one, we have our gravity. Let's go ahead and look at the start position. Start position can be, like we said, it'll be like an option, is that you'll be able to like make a box, and then if it's available, then the character will start at a certain position when the game starts. For the float type, actually starting position, we'll just make this equal to 0 for the moment. It'll get filled in with different variables later. And then after that one, we have a, let's see, what were our options here? Move and velocity. So we'll create a variable. The move direction, we're just going to make this one. This isn't going to be like we had before. This will be actually an integer. And the integer will actually just start off with 0. We could either do a 0 or a 1. So let's think about this for a moment. This one, the move direction, we're going to change our thinking about it here, is that this is actually going to be defining not the speed, but this is going to define which way he's facing. So we can say that facing left is going to be 0, facing right is going to be 1. Okay, so if we wanted him to start off in the game facing to the right, we could say, by default, we could say it's going to be 1. Okay? Alright. And then the other one, we'll go ahead and define as, and we'll actually just change the name of it. Let me copy this. We'll have to fix this one in a second, but we're going to take this one, and we'll just find all the move directions. We currently have one move direction. There we go. We'll just add an extra number so it doesn't change that one. The move direction option inside of here, let's change this one to velocity. So for velocity, it's going to actually store the vector 3, and it'll just replace all of the current move directions that we have. So we'll just replace all. So we had 11 occurrences in there. So the velocity itself, this is being used quite a bit, and it's going to continue to be used as we develop the code. For our move direction, let's go back to what we had before. Alright. So we have our basic stuff set up here for it. This allows us to have the velocity replaced inside of here. It has this is going to allow the move direction for us to be able to use it as a directional point. Now, at the moment, we've defined a good set of variables that we need. There's probably going to be some more variables that come up that we may not know we need right now, but for the most part, we should be able to just use these. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean up the last part and define the code itself. So let's go ahead and start off by commenting. Try to get into the habit. Sometimes I wind up commenting towards the end. I'll just spend 10 or 15 minutes and just comment afterwards. If you find that you can focus on that after, not just end it, not actually update it, that's fine. But if you feel like you need to update as you work, then be sure just to spend a few minutes and comment them out. So we'll go ahead and do this one here. This is just going to be the speed of the standard walk. And again, we could probably make this column a little bit further to the side here. And this one, we'll just do the speed of the run. Alright, so we got run speed. Next one we have is going to be speed of falling down, or rate of falling, either way. And then this is going to be jump height from walk. And then we'll have a jump height from run. And the jump height from crouching. Alright. We do, this one is force applied on character. And location for start position. Alright. Now we've got our move direction. So this would be direction player facing. And these can usually help, is that if you already define these, or at least you're thinking about it, then it's going to make it a little bit easier when you start using it in code. It's not going to be just like a strange word to you, but you've taken the time to formulate what the word's going to be called, think about the value of it, think about the actual definition of it. So on this one, we'll have the velocity. We'll say speed of player. Alright. And direction. So on these, if we have, let's go ahead and take this one up. For this part, we have our definitions here. Inside the code, let's do a little bit more cleanup on this before we get going with the rest of it. One of the things that we'll probably notice here, let's see. We'll go ahead and take these two. We'll comment these out and just use them in some code later on. We have a and actually, let's see, character controller. Okay. Inside the is grounded. One of the things that we used before was the transform and getting the direction. Let's not actually use this at all. We really don't need to use that direction part for it. We're just going to try to keep this as simple, as clean as possible, so that we can just easily add to the code if we need to for different type of animations. The next part, velocity. What we were doing at the moment, we were actually multiplying it by the walk speed, so that when it got put into the controller move, the velocity was being multiplied down here, and that allowed the character to move left and right at controlled speed. If we do it up here, this is going to be the same speed applied to the character all the way around. So we don't really need that, because that's not going to give us what we need for each type, meaning that if we go to a walk one, if we go to a run one, if we have an idle, we need to make sure that each one is actually multiplied inside of its own statement. Alright. So we have a pretty slender looking system right now is that we have one call calling up our direction. So velocity is going to know on the x-axis, meaning the horizontal left and right. It's going to know whether it's going to the left, whether it's going to the right. It's also going to know at the speed or the rate at which it's actually going. And then we also want to then start checking for inputs. And it's just simply saying, is the player doing this? Is the player doing that? And then if it is, then assign something to it. Alright, so this should get us pretty close to what we need in terms of the setup. We're going to do a few more changes here in a little bit, but this is pretty much what we want. We've got our variables defined, we have the main portion of our code defined, and then we can get moving into creating an idle state, creating the left and right states for the characters, creating the different states while the character's in the air, and define all those properties.